You're listening to the Spotless Podcast, where cleanliness is always next to podliness. Now, here are your hosts, Hannah Brooks Olson and Andrew Walsh.
Somebody else made a mess that I had to clean up this last week, and I didn't appreciate it. And it leads into what we're talking about today and what we talked about on our last show a little bit. I looked out my window one day, my front window at the street, and there was a plastic bin, a blue plastic bin, like a tote, that was broken. It was like missing part of the side of it. So it's really at this point nothing but trash that has just been left squarely in front of my house on our parking strip. And I want you to know, I'm not, unlike people who have issues with people who put dog poop in other people's garbage bins, I'm not precious about the things that occur on my parking strip. I don't really care that much.
We live in a society. Keep your damn dog poop out of my garbage bin. I pay for that out of my own wallet.
I don't care. But we take care of our grass parking strip. We have 2 street trees that I'm very dedicated about watering and mulching because I like them and I want them to be healthy. So, and people will sometimes leave stuff, but it goes quickly because we live on a somewhat busy street. And so that's fine. But this is truly just an article of garbage that has appeared.
Is there anything in this tote, or is this a plastic tote with a missing side?
It is an empty, like thin, like somewhat translucent blue plastic tote with a missing chunk out of the side. There's no lid. There's nothing in it. And because of the way that it is and the size of it, it could also potentially, if I were to just leave it there, it would kill the grass underneath and like leave a big yellow patch.
Or if you flipped it over, it could be like a doghouse.
It could be like a really sad dog. And actually in this neighborhood, it would end up being like a raccoon hut, which is also not optimal. So I noted it to Keith and he was like, oh yeah, I don't know, someone left it like in the night or whatever. And at first we thought it was maybe our neighbors to the south who are quite young and they're renters. And we sort of don't have a great grasp on how many of them there are. And like they're super nice. I've talked to them, but they are definitely in their early 20s. And they do have a tendency to just like forget stuff or like not really, when I was that age, I was a terrible neighbor. I was a horrible neighbor when I was like 21. And so I was like, oh, and they like load stuff and unload stuff in front of our house all the time, which is fine. And so I thought maybe it was just something that they broke the bin and then they left it there and then they were going to come back and get it. And they did not. And it's directly in front of like every single day that I'm in my home, I'm seeing it. And it's getting turned over and it's getting like people are obviously looking at it and deciding like no. And so I was like, Keith, what are we going to do about it? He was like, I don't know. And so he just like does nothing about it. It's just there. I was like, okay. And he's sort of in charge of the trash in our delineation of like, chores in our home. He's sort of trash and recycling is kind of his purview. And so it was there for like a week. And obviously no one was taking it because there's nothing. It's nothing. It's like, it's just, and it's that like brittle plastic. And so it just was this ugly thing in front of my home. And all I could think about was everybody who's driving by every day being like, oh, that bin's still there. Like if I were just a neighbor and I was driving by all the time, I would for sure have like Blue Bin Watch 2025. So finally yesterday, I took it in the backyard and I used a hatchet and I like smashed it into pieces, which was cathartic. And then I put the pieces in our garbage bin because our garbage bin is small. We have like one of the like the teeny tiny garbage toters. And so I don't have room in the garbage for this object.
And it's like it's such an awkward shape if you didn't smash it down. Even if it could fit in your garbage can, which it couldn't, it would just take up tons of space. It's kind of like I'm obsessed, as you will be unsurprised to hear, with like cutting up boxes into small pieces of cardboard when I recycle them, because otherwise Genevieve will just throw them in there and they just take up all kinds of space and it's all air.
Yeah, you have to like Tetris together like you said, when you're paying for your municipal like waste, it is an expense, and it is something like the cycles of of trash, recycle, compost, everything, like it is something that sort of weighs on you as you're like, I time what days I clean out the fridge based on when the garbage goes out.
Yeah,
right?
It's all connected.
It's the circle of filth. And so I had to smash it up because we also, the one thing Keith did try to do is he put it next to the garbage on garbage day to see if they would take it, which I thought was a terrible idea because if they did take it, they were going to charge us
They're going to put
a monstrous amount.
Yeah, probably my experience in Seattle is like extra garbage is about $13-14, I think.
I'm not paying $14 for this thing to get toted off, you know?
And the reason I know that is because they started sneaking that onto my bill, and then I had to like contest it, which is why I take a photo of my bins every night and post it on social media. Not every night. I'm not crazy. Just when I take them to the curb once a week.
But so I smashed it up into smaller pieces yesterday, which, as I said, was very cathartic. And it was that awful, like, more rigid plastic. So
I know
it just
exactly
kind of
what you're talking about. Yes, because I use those totes a lot for my volunteer gig, and I bought a new one recently. But I think because we ask people to transport all these bins and tables and chairs and whatever for this little pop-up that we do every week, and clearly somebody closed and it usually fills up somebody's car. Clearly somebody filled up their car too much and closed their trunk on this lid just so it just hit the corner and it just cracked. It doesn't have bendability to that. So when this is not what we should really be focusing on, but when you're like hatcheting this thing up, are you just using that like the blunt edge of the hatchet as something heavy? Or are you actually using the sharp edge? And what are you going down on the corners? What are you doing?
I used the sharp edge, and so first I went to where the whole, like the broken part was.
Yeah.
And I took the sharp, and it's like a little like hand hatchet, like a little guy, and I whacked it down onto where the broken part was, and so that cracked it pretty good.
Okay.
And then it broke apart so easily once I started just like, I would just go to wherever the crack was, and then some amount of it would break off, and then I put all the little pieces in the trash.
Were parts kind of flying off it, though? Like, was
Some
it kind of
parts
shattered?
were.
Because for some reason I'm getting a really bad feeling thinking about breaking this thing up.
I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't ideal, but it needed to get done.
Yeah.
But all I was thinking was like, somebody left me this mess. And, I love a clean. I love to clean. I've been doing a lot of cleaning lately. It's, the warm season, so there's a lot of additional cleaning I can be doing with my windows open. It's great. But when somebody else drops an object on you that requires labor to dispose of, that felt very uncool. Because it was clear that whoever was done with it was extremely done with it and was hoping that the world would just whisk it away.
Of course.
And I
it's
feel
just
that
littering.
this is... Yeah, exactly. And because it was on there was nobody else who was responsible for it once it was there. It was our responsibility because it was on our little piece of property. Which, again, I'm very communal in my feelings about, like, I don't care if people's dogs pee on our parking strip or on our lawn. I don't care. It does not matter to me. But a plastic object that could be harmful to wildlife, that could, that's shedding microplastics all over the place or whatever, like, it was just very unpleasant. And so and this happened after we put our call out on our last show about curbside recycling and curbside wish cycling and dumping. And so it just felt very timely that someone went ahead and left me some garbage, and I had to deal with it. So I did, but that's what we're going to talk about today also, is when it goes right and when it goes wrong.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about here, and it's the perfect... I'm glad this bad thing happened to you, because it's the perfect lead into our topic today.
Same.
We did put a call out to listeners saying, hey, this is a topic that's going to come up, and we want to hear from people, or at least we want to discuss on the show today, both the mentality of what you put out on the curb, if you want to be kind of a responsible neighbor and a responsible citizen, and you're getting rid of something that you feel like could have another life somewhere, when do you decide to put that out to the curb, and when are you doing that and nobody's going to take it and you're simply littering, and then what happens when you're sort of like kind of like, let's say, the victim of that, like you just described. And like I've gotten real surety about people doing this in our yard. Like, I have a neighbor, so I live like off of a North Aurora. There's a lot of foot traffic. It's a little bit of a neighborhood here, but there's just like, there's a lot of kind of scuzziness that goes on in this neighborhood. So it's not unusual for me to find debris in our front yard or right outside of our hedges on these pretty large, like, kind of tree lawn areas we have, litter. often I will pick it up, but then when somebody dumps something, I'm going to admit some things today that I'm not proud of that I think you're going to give me a hard time about. But I'm not into picking up other people's messes. And sometimes I just move their messes closer to them or further away from me. And a good example of that is just a couple of days ago, I'm out in the, there's, again, this is kind of the tree lawn area. This is an area outside of our fence, but it's a pretty large tree lawn. You could park a car front first, you know what I mean, going into it. And people do park there sometimes. But I mow it and I maintain it and I try to keep the grass green and everything.
Because you don't have sidewalks.
We have no sidewalks. We have these really big,
Yeah, where it's like gravel and then there's grass. And so it's almost like a really big shoulder.
It's like a very big shoulder, yes. Okay. But it's grassy and I mow it and I weed eat it and I keep it tight, I'm keeping something tight and it's the tree lawn. And, but then sometimes, you find debris there, and sometimes I have to put on a work glove and go and clean it up. I have other neighbors who sometimes go around the neighborhood with little pincers, like kind of cleaning up, which I really appreciate. That's really sweet. But then sometimes I'm just like in a mood. I'm like, no, I'm not cleaning that up. Like when I was out there and somebody, dogs love to pee and poop along our hedges and fence. It's kind of I always see people, but then they almost always bag it up. And I'm walking the other day, I'm leaving my house for some reason, and there's a huge, like some big dog just took a huge crap right there in our little tree lawn, right in the grassy area. And I'm like, should I clean this up? Should I put this in a bag and put it in my garbage? No, it's not my dog. I don't have a dog. I took a shovel, like a full, like kind of, full-size spade shovel, and just went out there. I just flicked it in the street. I'm like, I don't care who sees me doing this. And then this dog shit just kind of flew and plopped into the street, right in the damn center of the street. By the time I got back from whatever my errand was, it had been run over and
it's
mostly
just become
gone.
one with the road.
And I'm like, that is really not fair to other people. But you know what? It wasn't fair. I'm just like, I'm not cleaning up this unbagged dog shit in my yard.
That's what Keith would call a day ruiner. When someone leaves a giant dump like that, like in a place where someone might actually walk through it.
I could have stepped on it.
There is nothing worse. Okay, there's nothing worse as a dog owner and I will tell you what I do in these situations, and there's no good way. I have at times been out walking my dog, and she's taken one dump, and I'm like, cool, I had a bag. Maybe it was my last bag. Yeah. Sometimes it's the last bag. There's one brand of dog roll, like bag roll people, like there's one company, and there's a sticker that says 3 bags left on the third to last bag, and then there's a sticker that says the last bag to remind you to re-up on your bags, right? Because that is a thing. Whoever did that deserves a Nobel Prize. Incredible. But sometimes you're on your last bag and you're like, oh shit, I forgot I'm on my last bag. And your dog takes a dump, and then they decide they've got one more in the chamber later on in the walk, and you're like, fuck. And I have gotten so creative with picking up dog turds. I will look for other pieces of litter to use. Like if there's a wrapper around, I will use that. I will do anything. I've used a large leaf, like a maple leaf, and just to at least scoot it under a bush or out of the way, which I know is not ideal because whatever bacteria and stuff, but
you're trying to not have somebody step on it.
Make it not a day ruiner. That's my main goal is always to at least have it not in someone, because if you're out walking and you don't have anything else on you, you're not carrying a purse, you don't have a jacket, whatever, you just don't have anything else, and you just do not always have a spare. But if you have a giant dog that takes giant turds like that, and you don't at least try and get a stick and scooch it under a bush or get it out of the way, that is so inconsiderate. Related to the people who have the reacher grabbers, the grabby boys. Adopt One Block is a nonprofit organization that encourages people to adopt their block and sort of be responsible for it garbage wise. Which, if you're in the suburbs, that's probably not as huge of an issue. But again, I live on the intersection of two somewhat, fairly well-traveled streets. And one of them is on a bus route. And so by the bus stop, sometimes there's trash or whatever. And there's one corner that just seems to gather garbage. So I adopted our block. And
you're officially somewhere on a register.
I'm a parent.
This is your block. Okay,
Andrew, I'm a parent of this block.
Because I have a specific question that if you don't mind me asking now. if this is a kind of an official role that you're volunteering for, do they give you any place to dump the garbage?
So this is what I was going to say. So
Okay.
they send you a reacher grabber, they send you garbage bags, and they send you gloves as part of like when you do this, like that's your like welcome package. And it's the same block. I just adopted the block that Lola and I walk around almost every single day. And so every now and then, like if I'm out walking, I notice it's garbagey. I'll be like, okay, tomorrow we're going to make it a trash walk. And I just bring the grabbers and I bring a bag. The problem is they do not, you are then responsible for the trash that you're picking up. You have to make room for it or you have to take it somewhere. And this is what I was going to get to. We, generally speaking, in these United States, need to be following the Disneyland rule of a garbage bin, like an everybody garbage bin.
You can't dress up exactly like a garbage bin, but you can sort of dress up in the colors of it's garbage binding or bounding, or is that what you're talking
which
about?
is because it is hard. I often want to be out walking as a garbage bin, and instead I look like a garbage bag. But so the rule in Disney, as I understand it, is that there is a garbage bin every 10 steps, basically. And that so that you are not inclined to ever leave trash anywhere because there's always a garbage bin somewhere really close by. Similarly, Andrew WK once said in an advice column that if you have a party and you don't have clear garbage bins, your apartment becomes the garbage bin, right? So I feel deeply about this with cities. I can tell you where the closest everybody garbage bin, like municipal garbage bin, place where I could put trash that is not my own personal home. And it is 4 blocks away. And even that's not a municipal one. It's at a 7-Eleven, but they just have a big ass dumpster that we all use. The fact that there aren't city-owned and collected garbage bins every 3 blocks in every municipal city is bananas. Because, of course, we have garbage problems when there's nowhere to put your garbage.
Yes, of course. But I think cities have been disincentivized is, I think, the word I'm looking for there, although I'm not even sure if I want to stand up for that one. But like, I don't know if it's like security stuff after the Boston bombings and maybe even going back to 9/11, like the idea of people putting dangerous things in garbage cans or what it is. But like, there's something going on with Metro here in Seattle. I'm a big fan of Metro. I never a lot of people love to like kind of dunk on their extended timelines and issues with public transportation. I'm a huge bus rider and train rider, and also I think they do a pretty damn good job given what they're up against. But there must be something security-wise or otherwise where they do not put garbage bins at all the bus stops or even the train stations. Like this huge train station up here in Northgate has no garbage bins at all. If you blow your nose, you just have to hold this thing.
This is bananas. And it's like people are not, if you don't put out a garbage bin, then the whole place becomes a garbage bin.
Yes,
like
exactly.
People are not going to carry their trash around. And it seems to me that if we have an issue with litter and with people putting trash where it doesn't belong, the first place to look is like, well, where does it belong? Because if you're riding the bus or you are walking, between neighborhoods, like in our neighborhood on the main drag, there are garbage bins, but even then it's only every like 4 blocks, and they're the garbage on the bottom and they're the recyclables on the top, which I really like. There's with little holes specifically for cans.
I can picture
and then because we have bottle deposit here, a lot of times people will take those cans out for their own which is great. Also, wonderful. Separate those out. Love it. Make it so people don't have to dig through a garbage can to get the recyclables. Brilliant, right? But they're only on like the main big commercial street. And especially in Portland, where we have a lot of like sort of mini commercial streets or little commercial blocks, there does not seem to be any city planning around putting a garbage bin in there. And that to me is wild, because I feel like we would all find a lot less trash just like on our lawns if there was even every somewhat major street or at every bus stop, right? Even just like one of the little like cans with the flappy lid, attached to the bus like post. If it's not even, it's barely a bus stop. Like we have a covered bus stop down on the corner and it doesn't have a garbage bin. And it's like a whole covered one with a digital display and everything. It's like well maintained.
Yeah.
No garbage bin. Like, just weld a metal garbage bin on there.
I was at a very main bus stop. Now, there is a lot of construction around this area now that's starting to get completed, but a very main bus stop, and I'm sure you know it, in the heart of Ballard. I'm going to say it's Northwest Market Street and 15th. Is that what I'm usually probably taking to get home? Big bus stop. The 40 goes by there. Covered bus stop, all this stuff. And I was standing there, as I often am, the other day, and I had just a little piece of garbage to throw away, and I remembered, oh, there's no garbage can here, is there? And I was angry about it. And then I'm just like, so I'm waiting for the bus anyway, so I sort of just wander around, and I go to the other side of the bus stop, and somebody has taken an office garbage bin, like a little waste paper basket that you would like a kind of a Rubbermaid one, like you'd see in a traditional office, and just set it there. And it might have even had a liner in it, and people were just using it. And I was like, God bless the person who put this here. Like, I don't know who did this rogue garbage bin, but God bless them.
Do we just need to be doing like renegade garbage? And then like, but here's the thing.
Who
okay, you
maintains
take the bag out. Well, and like, okay, maybe say as part of my adopting of the block, I were to zip tie a bin around the bus stop or whatever.
Yeah.
And I once a week went and emptied it with my gloves on and my reacher grabber, keeping an eye out for sharps and stuff.
Yeah.
Although there should just be a sharps disposal there too. That's one of the hard
yeah.
shut ones that you can't actually get into, so people can't reuse them. And I took that garbage out. Again, what am I going to do with it?
Yeah.
I'm going to put it in my own garbage bin, which is teeny tiny and like on purpose because we try really hard not to make a lot of garbage. Or do I put on my Orioles cap and a mask and go dump it behind a restaurant? Like
exactly. Well, I can't imagine doing that.
And no, only a bad person would do that.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to say I feel like you noted somewhere that one of the that in your neighborhood or like in my old neighborhood that Finney Greenwood was doing like a recycling kind of event.
Yeah, maybe a month ago now, and it was a rainy day, so we didn't go, but it was like a collective yard sale day and like you bring your recyclables day, and it was like this big neighborhood event that was basically very focused on kind of reusing and recycling, and it sounded like a good day at the park too. I'm sure there were food trucks.
I feel like that's the kind of thing. And so similarly, we have the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability here in Portland has dumpster day events where they just like bring out like the big ass like construction dumpster basically. And they leave it, either they put it in like a church parking lot or whatever. It's supervised. There's like a volunteer, there's someone there. And in this economy, you can pay someone to do almost anything. So you could pay someone like a relatively low rate, but it would still be very appreciated by them to just stand by the dumpster and make sure no one takes a shit in it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, seems to me to be a good use of tax dollars. And so they put the dumpster out in a public area and you have all day to just go use that communal dumpster in your neighborhood. And it's well known ahead of time. They put up signs in the neighborhood to be like, dumpster days are coming. This neighborhood gets one. And you can come bring your large, bulky items that you don't have room for in your trash to avoid dumping. Mm-hmm. And I feel like even expanding a program like that to like once a month in the summertime, having a pretty big place where people can just dump their trash. Like, you can say, like, I know that, like, the conservative argument against it would be like, well, I don't want to pay for other people's trash. But, like, we literally all pay for other people's trash with litter, with ocean plastic, and with just, like, the generally, like, gross. Again, if you want your neighborhood to look nice, you have to give people a place to put their trash.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking a lot about trash and litter lately.
Yeah, and I want to get kind of back to like what you do when you find big items in your, kind of on your property or property adjacent, and then also where do we draw the lines is what we put out there. But I just overall, my feeling about this lately has been like, we live in cities like Seattle and Portland that are very progressive, and that's why we have, like, if I talk to my folks about their garbage policy in the suburbs of Ohio, it's just very, very different. I don't think they pay out of pocket. I think it's all covered by their taxes, first of all. We actually pay for our garbage pick. I guess we don't pay for recycling, but we even pay for yard waste pickup, which the city then uses to mulch it up and use in various projects around the city. And, of course, we pay for just regular, like, non-compostable, non-recyclable garbage. And that is something, social engineering plays a role in there, and it has gotten me to reduce the amount of stuff I put in the landfill. Like, it literally does work because it's kind of expensive. We have a garbage bin that actually looks like a full-size garbage bin, but we don't pay for the full-size garbage bin, so they put these liners in it that make it so we can only use basically the top half. So it's not quite as tiny as... Oh, that's yours. So
no, that is ours, but
we have
it is
the tiny one.
I mean, it's really small. Because it is like, it's half of a small garbage toter. Yes, we have the same thing.
Yeah, and so there's not much room in there. And now I have realized that, like, a couple of weeks ago, I think I was taking out the garbage, and I'm like, Genevieve, like, these policies of making it really expensive to throw things away kind of works because our garbage game is pretty tight right now. Like, we have we have room. We could put another bag in here. I feel like when we were downsizing or getting used to this smaller situation, I was like, how will this ever work? But you just start, like, kind of thinking in the back of your head, like, well, this should be recycled anyway, and you just start thinking about ways to reduce the garbage that is going in there. And so I applaud that. But if you make it, and then to take things to the dump is pretty damn expensive. It's like $35 if you throw away a tissue, or 30 million pounds. There's like some sort of a range, right? Like, there's a cutoff where it gets more expensive, but like, it has to be like a huge load to go over that range. And so, like, it's like, $35 if you literally have to throw away one nail. You know what I mean? And so they need to make it both. I like them reinforcing this and getting us to, make it harder to throw things away to save the planet and help our community. I'm all for that. But you also put up your gatekeeping in a certain way as well, and leading more people to do illegal dumping, because a lot of people don't have a way to get stuff to the dump if they have something big. So we live in a house. We're lucky to have this house here. Right behind us in this alleyway is more like low-income housing. I think it's even sort of overseen by the city in some way. So a lot of people coming and going, a lot of huge trash piles back by their dumpsters. Like, it's pretty unsightly, some of the scenes around our house. But it is what it is. Oh, I did want to mention, we have something here in Seattle that we rely on a lot called the Find It, Fix It app. I don't know what Portland's situation is, but you've probably used it, and they're really good about that. You have the app on your phone. You take a photo of if somebody has dumped a bunch of stuff, or if if folks have been living there for a while, then the RV moves and they just leave a whole bunch of stuff behind. You can take a photo of it, say which corner it's at, and the Find It, Fix It people will come and clean up. They do a good job. They have certain rules. Like, first of all, you don't use that to report on somebody who's maybe living in an RV on your street.
Although
or something.
People do.
They try to, but they say specifically on the app, this is not our job here. We are happy to help you clean up messes in your neighborhood. Not remove camps, for goodness sake.
Right.
But one annoying thing is they won't touch grocery carts, and there are a lot of abandoned grocery carts kind of around our neighborhood, but they're like, that's private property of whoever. If it says Kroger on it or whatever, we can't mess with that.
I did, when I worked at a grocery store, I did have to sometimes go pick up grocery carts that were many blocks away, where we would every now and then just use, I don't know why we didn't have a vehicle for this, but we would use one guy's pickup truck, and we would drive up the street and go oh, that's one of ours.
Throw them in the, that's good. I saw a really...
They're expensive.
Yeah, no, they are. And also I know the grocery store that I used to go to almost daily, they used to have the good little small grocery carts that are two-tiered. Those are the only ones I like to use. But for a while, they stopped buying those and replaced them all with the big clunky kinds because, unfortunately, the smaller ones have more street value, and people keep walking away with these little guys, and so we have to stock, which is a pain to use the big ones in the grocery store. But this is an aside, and we have so much to talk about. But you know how we have the rent bikes and rent scooters and all kinds of stuff around all around the city here, which I love. Even I try to attract as many of those to our little tree lawn area as possible because it gives us a lot of options if we're leaving the house. So we hope that there will be a bunch of bikes and scooters outside our house. Also, I'd rather have those there than a car parking on the tree lawn.
Truly.
But sometimes they have to send out teams to pick them up, if they need to be serviced or whatever.
Right.
And I'm assuming, and in my neighborhood, you just never really know. I've seen trucks going around picking up the Lime bikes and Lime scooters, but they look like official Lime vehicles. I was pulling into my driveway the other day, and this shitty-ass red pickup truck with tons of dings and everything in it was driving down my street with 4 or 5 Lime bikes in the back of it, and I was like, "Are
Do
they
I see
just
something? Say something."
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if you're just like taking all of those bikes, or maybe they could be like farming it out, kind of like rideshare services. Like, got a truck, we'll hire you to collect these bikes and bring them back to the shop to be fixed. Like, I don't want to assume somebody was just absconding with all of these, but it really looked like the Beverly Hillbillies had struck oil, but instead of oil, it was a Lime bike reserve. It was quite something.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, I mean, that's a real element to things that are communal like that, like bikes and scooters, where they are just out on the street, and if you leave them untended to, again, then they become trash. And so, like, someone does have to service them, but it is, I mean, again, I did.
This was a weird
just
scene.
Say, I was doing that with garbage can, or with shopping carts, in 2005, but that was a different time. It is, yeah, I know what you mean. The other day I went to Fred Meyer, which is a grocery store in the Northwest, and they were doing shopping cart like cleanup and service, and they had a big big moving truck, like a big rider truck or whatever, and all of these shopping carts laid like wheels up. And they had guys out there spraying them down and tinkering with the wheel. Like, it was just like shopping cart service day.
Yeah,
I know. And I was in a hurry that day, and I really wanted to just like look at what. And then I was like, I bet that's someone's job. Like, someone does contracting that's just like shopping cart maintenance. And then that was very interesting to me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, anything that's communal, I mean, someone has to be responsible for it, right? Like, that's the thing. And because if you don't, then it becomes trash. But how many Lime bikes in the back of a beater before you're like, should I call Mr. Lime and be like...
I'm pretty sure, whatever. I did not want to get involved with whatever that was. And again, I was driving and parking, and this random truck just passed me. I actually am going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'll bet you they hire just kind of random drivers with trucks to maybe come pick those things up. Who knows, though? You see some strange stuff around here. But I did want to go back to like kind of I guess let's call this illegal dumping for a second before we turn to like what we think is valuable to put out on the sidewalk and let people try to grab, and then we'll turn to some listeners. But I have another confession, because basically that story I told you about me like looking at that dog poop and saying like, that's not my dog poop, that's not my problem, and I just flicked it into the street. I basically did that with a mattress. And again, I realized that like you could definitely, this does not paint me in glory. I'm just admitting this, and people can judge me as they will judge me. And I feel like this is like a real Bob Walsh moment, and that's my dad. And I don't know if he would do this exact thing, but I could just see him getting so peeved and just, because he's a very responsible garbage man as well, you know what I mean? Like his bin game is like very locked in. He was like borrowing the neighbor's bins. They had some agreement that he could use his neighbor's bins as overflow if he like took it out for her or something like that. Like he's not somebody who's sloppy around these things. But all of that is to say, here in my neighborhood, I came home one day, I think, or no, actually I was just about to leave. I got in my car. We live on a corner, so I get in my car, and I take a left turn, and I'm heading towards Aurora, and I see that on the other side of my house, somebody has taken a full-ass mattress and just leaned it up against our fence. It's not like sort of in our area. Like, it's leaning up against our fence. Like, again, we take care of that tree lawn property, so I'm sort of, like, protective of it anyway, but I don't really know where the line is between what I actually own and what I don't. But I know I own the damn fence. Well, I mean, I think we all just take care of the lawns that are in front of us, So I get protective of it, but, people can park there. People do park there sometimes. But I mow it. I maintain it. But then somebody just takes this huge mattress, and it wasn't even in terrible shape, but it's a mattress. I don't think anybody should ever use unless you're like literally like just trying to survive on the street and you have to take what you can take. But like, people putting mattresses out as if somebody's going to take it and reuse it, bring it into their home and reuse it, is ridiculous.
No,
nobody's going to take your nasty-ass mattress.
No, a mattress on the side of the road is always garbage.
It's always garbage. And they basically put a huge piece of garbage that the reason you're doing that is because you don't have a way handily of getting rid of this.
And nobody else does either. And no one's reusing it.
Yes. And
there's nothing to repurpose. No.
And I look at, like, again, the folks who probably live in this apartment building right across the alleyway, like, if I don't have a great way of getting a mattress to the dump, I'm sure a lot of them don't have a great way at all. You know, like, not everybody has trucks that you can just throw, or the ability to go rent a truck, which is what Vives and I usually do if we need a truck. And so they have this mattress. They don't know what to do with it. They're probably moving. Maybe they're young, like you were saying before, but for whatever reason, somebody took this mattress, said, I don't want this to be my problem anymore. I'll just put it up against this fence, and then somebody will take it, and I can just tell myself this fantasy that I'm actually, like, you know, somebody is going to take this, but nobody's going to take it. It's Seattle. It was winter. It's rainy. Like, are you shitting me?
No, that is just unloading something, and that is like the shopping cart theory is that, like, if you put away your shopping cart when you're done shopping, when nobody's looking, nobody's expecting anything of you, like, it means you're, like, more communally minded. And if you just don't do that, if you just put your cart wherever, or you just, like, dock it the worst is in a planter, it's because you care more about, like, unburdening yourself than of, like, the collective sort of needs and social bonds. And I feel like dumping a mattress is worse because, I mean, it's understandable because, like, getting rid of a mattress is hard. It is hard to get rid of a mattress. I have had people come pick up on that. When I moved out of my studio apartment in Seattle, I had a cover on my mattress because I'd had bed bugs. So I'd had a plastic, like, or the waterproof cover on it. So the mattress itself was actually still in very good shape. And I listed it on the like Buy Nothing group in my neighborhood. And I was like, hey, I have a bed and I have a mattress. If you have maybe just moved to the area and you are okay with a lightly used mattress that has been encased in plastic its entire life, like, come get it. And somebody did. And, like, that was great. It's not the most convenient thing. And most mattresses have not been used with the idea that somebody else will also want to use it for obvious reasons. But we don't have good ways to get rid of mattresses generally, and that means they are ripe for dumping. Like, they are just ready to be dumped. But also, when you do it, you know for a fact it's just trash. You never are thinking someone could use this.
But I think some people maybe, and again, maybe depending on who left it there, maybe it was a younger person. They really were, like, trying to convince themselves, like, oh, somebody will take this. But I'll tell you what, I'm not taking it. So I get in my car, I'm driving, I turn the corner, and then I see the other side of my house, and I'm like, somebody has just, I'm like, I was the embodiment of, oh, hell no. Like, I'm just like, what? I pull my car over under a tree lawn like a cop, like, racing up to, like, a crime scene. You know how they kind of, like, pull in and kind of at an angle or whatever?
You, like, skirted in there. Yeah.
And I'm also like, what I'm about to do, and, like, I'm not even really thinking. I'm just, like, in a fugue state. I'm like, somebody's just taken their nasty-ass mattress and leaned it up against our fence. So I pull in quickly, and I'm like, I realize that neighbors literally might be watching me right now. This might be caught on camera. I don't give a shit. I just grabbed this mattress, by the way, without gloves or anything. I just grabbed this mattress, and I pick it up, and I kind of decide I'm going to throw it to the other side of the alleyway, because I'm guessing that's where it's from. Like, there's this kind of area that's, like, not maintained very well. There's junky cars there. People will sometimes put, like, little boxes of absolute garbage out there with a sign that says free, and then nature will just take it. It's just like this area. And I'm like, well, I'm at least going to throw this mattress over to that side. I don't want it on my goddamn fence. So I pick it up and I go to throw it, but instead of making it kind of all the way across the alleyway, there's this huge rut with a puddle, and the mattress just falls right into it. And this is, I am telling you, have you ever seen the movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, or do you know the concept of it?
I do.
Imagine if you were shrunk like one of those kids and you saw a dish sponge. That's basically what the mattress was, because it's the exact shape of a sponge, only it's like a big mattress. I pick it up, I throw it. It doesn't go as far as I want, and it just lands right in this puddle and immediately just starts absorbing all of this just shitty rainwater. And I'm like, well, That's not better for anybody except for me. And so I get back in my car as fast as possible because I wasn't sure like if anybody had seen me do that or not. It's not a good look. It wasn't my responsibility. Somebody littered essentially on my property. But on the other hand, once they've done that, me just littering it somewhere else is not legal, I don't think. I'm just furious and not taking somebody else's mattress to the dump. So I end up throwing in this puddle, and then I go on my merry way. I think I was running out to grab a sandwich. I remember driving, not wanting to touch my steering wheel. I was sort of trying to drive because I had to grab this thing with my hands, and it was somewhat wet because it's freaking Seattle. Like, it's absorbing all of the weather. And so, like, I remember I get to, like, Jersey Mike's, wherever I'm going, and I, like, wash my hands right away. I pick up my food, and then on my way home, I take the Find It, Fix It app. I report it. I'm like, mattress here on this kind of crappy alleyway corner, and it was cleaned up within a day or two. And so I say all that to say, like, I know that what I did was wrong. Like, if somebody litters on your property, you can't just throw that litter back into public. If somebody saw you doing that, they're like, you're littering, and you'd say, well, no, somebody threw that in my yard. It's like, it's your problem now. So I know that what I did with that mattress was not right. I did report it, and it got cleaned up, and we use that app all the time around here. But if anybody saw me doing that, I would have looked like a goddamn madman. I just, like, monster grabbed this mattress and flung it into a huge rain puddle.
But, like, that ability to, like, call, and I'm curious about, like, what the logistics are for Find It, Fix It, like, who it is that gets dispatched and how that works, because it is, again, in the interest of everybody to have people who go out and dispose of those things when they're hard to dispose of, like mattresses, where, like, again, you really can't convince yourself that someone's going to see it and be like, oh, I definitely want to lay my entire body across this sponge that has been outdoors in Seattle for God knows how long.
Yeah.
And before that, somebody else was laying all over. Like, everything about a mattress is gross and, like, nobody wants it. And so having the ability to report it is really great. And it's clear that maybe that information, because, like, it doesn't cost, you don't pay, you just report it, and then someone comes and gets it. I mean, you pay through your tax dollars, I'm sure. But, like, you want to, whoever left it there in the first place, you want to just be like, dude, at least report it. If you're going to leave it, if you're going to dump it, then also tell on yourself and get it taken care of.
Yeah. There is, like, again, there's this little area that's sort of like kind of industrial that's like maybe 1 block away from me. There's like a big, huge composting plant there and some other kind of industrial buildings on the other side of the street. And it's a place that people will sort of temporarily, like, kind of park their RVs. Like, there's, again, I can't stress enough some of the weird stuff you see in the neighborhood. Like, the other day, there was this RV there that was there for several days, and I saw the guy, and he's kind of collecting a whole bunch of stuff. I don't know what the end game is for any of this stuff, but he's kind of collecting a bunch of stuff. I heard some neighbors, like, nattering about that on the email chain, and I don't like that. I'm like, there's somebody there, like, they're doing their thing. It's not bothering me. I would never, like, kind of report that. But I do think, what also was there, though, was, I don't know where this thing came from, how it got there, but a little white minivan with every single window totally smashed out of it and clearly had been engulfed in flames at some point. And that was part of this whole menagerie, too. So I think some neighbors tattled or whatever on that whole situation. And the other day it was gone, but a bunch of garbage had been left behind. And now there's just kind of a pile of garbage and debris on the sidewalk. So that, to me, is totally Find It, Fix It territory. And a couple of times this has happened where I've, like, kind of reported it, and then I happen to see the crew that comes out to clean it up. So I always make sure to, like, roll down my window and, like, thank them. I'm just like, thank you for, because that is a great, important service, I think. Like, just having this stuff pile up in the city or the neighborhood is just, garbage attracts garbage, right? And so it needs to be done.
Again, like a shopping cart. If you leave your shopping cart just, like, on the side of whatever the parking lot without taking it to the corral, if you leave one, other people will then put theirs next to it, and this is a thing. And garbage is like this too. I'm curious, again, in this economy, I feel like that's not a bad job. Like, that is a job that, as long as it's paying well, to, like, go pick up stuff on the side of the road.
Probably hard,
like,
they pull up with these big trucks. They got to pull a bunch of stuff up on the trucks, and
you know, it's an honest day's work. I also know from working with unhoused and formerly unhoused people that the idea of just collecting stuff becomes very sort of ingrained in you. So I used to work, this is such a sidebar, and then we're going to move on to what people have found that they've loved, because we did have some listeners, like, tell us about some of their like, curbside successes, which is the opposite of all of this. I used to work with a population of people who were housed in a permanent supportive housing complex in a building, and I used to volunteer there and like help them do like writing and storytelling and stuff. And we would talk a lot about sort of the process of going from unhoused to housed and how like what occurred in sort of like psychologically. And one of the things that a lot of them would talk about is having to really break down that hoarding mentality when you have a place to live, because when you are outside or you're unstably housed, your stuff disappears a lot because people report it or it gets stolen or whatever. And so you are chronically just sort of keeping things that could be useful at some point or that you could want, or if it's free, it's there, great. And so a lot of folks who are newly housed, part of the support and the sort of emotional and psychological regulation that they have to do is being okay getting rid of stuff because they don't have to just keep collecting. And so whenever housed people are like, oh my God, like these encampments are just like full, there's so much crap there, like blah, blah, blah. First of all, that's your crap, dog. Like they didn't buy that. They picked it up. You left it somewhere. Like that is the community's garbage that they have picked up. So in a way, it's also yours. And two, it's because of that mentality of like, well, someone might, steal my one shopping cart, so I gotta have two shopping carts. And so I feel like that's also a big part of the conversation around like stuff. And when you leave stuff is don't dump something on the side of the road if you wouldn't want to see it being used by someone who's unstably housed.
Yeah. By the way, let me just ask you one quick question, then I'm going to play a voicemail from Dave about some of his curbside finds. I have in the past, I think, like if I'm eating, I'm making this already too complicated. If I am eating a mixed nuts, which I often do in my car, I keep a can of mixed nuts. They're deluxe mixed nuts, not to brag, but I like the deluxe kind. I'm doing
nuts
okay.
Are a great car snack. I'm
really
like, I'm very here. Are they fancy?
They're like Planters Deluxe. So instead of having peanuts, they have like the pistachios, like shelled pistachios in there, whatever. But no matter how deluxe they are, they still always have, are they Brazil nuts? Those really big ones that I don't like. I just don't understand Brazil nuts. I have often said, like, for people who believe in God, how can you believe in a God that would create Brazil nuts? I don't think I'm thinking of Brazil nuts are the little round ones, right? What are the?
No, those are macadamias.
Macadamias
are the little guys. The Brazil nuts are the big
just
ones.
Whatever. Yeah. So if I have those, and like I'm not going to throw it out my car window because of danger, but like I have no problem like taking a nut and throwing it into the bushes or the grass or something. I figure nature will take care of it. So maybe I'm a hypocrite here, but I was pulling into the grocery store parking lot the other day. And some dude, I see him, he's got a bag of oranges that he just bought at the grocery store, and he's getting into his van, and he peels an orange and then just takes the orange peel and just throws it on the ground under a tree, like kind of, it's like a parking lot area, but there's a tree there, right? And he just throws it on the ground kind of under this tree. And I am passing him, and we lock eyes. I'm driving by slowly as I'm getting ready to park. We lock eyes, and I stare daggers at MFer. I'm just like, are you shitting me with that? Like, that is not, to me, an orange peel is not part of the natural, like environmental economy. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. But in other words, like, I feel like if I throw a nut on the ground, a squirrel or something can do something with that. Nobody in Seattle, there's no creature that can do something with an orange peel. But I'm actually curious if I'm wrong about this. I did not confront the guy, but I did note, I drove back a couple of days later, that orange peel was still on the ground, just kind of like in public. And by the way, there was a garbage can maybe like 500 feet away or something, like over at the front of the grocery store. But no, don't do that. He just like, there was something about I feel like he saw me do it, and then he like kind of stared me down. It felt like a real confrontation for a moment. But again, I was in my car, so it wasn't like going to explode into anything. But I thought that was pretty boorish.
I feel like an orange peel, I could go either way on.
Really?
And I feel the same about an apple core, because or like anything sort of organic, right?
Banana peels?
Well, obviously don't leave them in the middle of a sidewalk.
Zoink.
I mean, they look yucky, so there's that. They will break down. Again, would I put an orange peel into a bush where no one could see it and nature could take its course and ants would eat it and whatever and it would just become soil? Sure, it's compostable, right? It's not plastic trash. But throwing it just on this, like you said, in public, is a little déclassé. It's a little, it's not. It's right on that line of littering. I'd be curious what other people think about this.
It's one of those things where if I was leaving this store, and again, I live in a neighborhood where there's plenty of litter, like you see all kinds of things. And orange peels are nowhere near high on the list of the upsetting things that I see on the sidewalk.
Right.
Trust me. And if I had been walking into the store one day and I saw this orange peel, it wouldn't even probably have registered. But I think it was because I saw somebody doing it in the act. And just like seeing somebody just do that in the act, it was just like, it seems so flagrant to me. But I understand that I could probably relax on that one a little bit. But I do feel like I've talked too much. And let's come back to this idea of putting stuff at the curb. I want to get your thoughts about the kind of stuff that you think it's okay to put at the curb, but let's hear some of these stories first. And let's start with Dave, who is calling, I believe, from New York.
Hi, Hannah and Andrew. It's listener Dave in New York City, talking about curbside scores, dumpster scores, street scores. I used to work at a university, and move-out weekends were a treasure hunt. It started when school would end for the semester, all the students that would just put everything on the curb, and televisions, refrigerators, furniture. I was at a very high-end college in Washington, D.C. that's ran by Jesuits that I won't name because they don't like publicity like that. But designer clothes and handbags, the university staff would start at basically sundown the day of move-out. And there's a hierarchy, like the maintenance guys got there first and the cops got there after that. And then just random people from the neighborhood would come through and just pick through this mound of very expensive garbage. I furnished a house with dumpster scores from move out at a university. Love the show. Talk to you later. Bye.
Hannah,
this is very real.
Can I tell you about something that Genevieve introduced me to called Dirty Christmas? And this is, I don't mind saying what this school is. Genevieve went to Wellesley, which is another school that attracts mostly, I think, a well-to-do student base. It's a tough school to get into and everything. And so I think similarly, when kids moved out of the dorms at the end of the semester, a year or whatever, they would do something very, very similar. Just leave all this like otherwise expensive stuff behind in the dorms. And Genevieve and her friends would go, and I can't remember where it was accessible, but they would go around, and they called it Dirty Christmas, and they would go around the dorms and collect all of this stuff, and they would use it, and they loved it. And I think I might have told you this a long time ago. When Genevieve and I were first dating, we were both right out of college, I think, like within a year or something. And Genevieve, I was staying at Genevieve's place, and she had this, like, I guess you would call it a body pillow. People don't really have body pillows anymore, but there's like a long pillow that's kind of like, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet. And it's kind of, you might put it on top of your comforter or whatever, but you can also sort of snuggle with it. And she just sort of had it in her bed, and it was just there. And I think that we were probably dating 6 months to a year when she revealed to me that that was a Dirty Christmas find, and I was sickened. I was like, I've snuggled with that pillow. I'm sure it was some very clean Wellesley girl. Sorry, Wellesley woman. That's always a correction in our house. I'm sure it was a very clean, wealthy Wellesley woman who left that pillow behind. But when I found out that I was just like kind of getting comfortable with some pillow that I didn't know the original origins of, I found that to be very upsetting.
Yeah, it's hard with something you can't wash, right? Like that's what we're getting into with the mattress situation, is it's something you cannot launder. I don't know. Have I ever told this story on this podcast about the dead girl blanket?
I don't think so. I think I'd remember that. Is it the Shroud of Turin situation?
It's not.
Okay.
Many, many years ago, my great-grandfather passed away. He was dope. I was in college. It was my freshman year of college. And in the summer between, because nobody in my family ever has a regular funeral, like we just don't do funerals anywhere in my family. Mm-hmm. Instead, we had a big get together, like camp out. There was a cabin on a lake that people stayed at in Bend, Oregon. So we were at a campground, like a regular campground. And when we got there, there was a tent with stuff sort of neatly stacked with it, but there was nobody there. And it was like a pretty nice tent, and there was some clothes that were my size, and I was very poor at the time. And we waited a few days, and nobody came back. And so then we went and asked the camp host. And I'm not just saying me, a 19-year-old who was unbelievably high on cannabis at the time, every single day. My parents were involved in this. My father, who was an active law enforcement officer at the time, was involved in this caper. So we went and asked the camp host, and we were like, what's the deal with this campsite here? And we were told that they had rented it, I think, for some amount of time, and they had gone out one day and never came back and left all this stuff, including a pair of Doc Marten sandals in my size that I wore for many years after that, which tells you what we ended up doing. The camp host was like, yeah, you can take all that stuff if you want. They're not coming back. And so there was a tent, which we used for a while, and a blanket that still to this day is in my sister's home that we all refer to as the dead girl blanket, because we're assuming whoever was there is no longer on this earthly plane. And it was all like, it was women's clothes, so that's why we called it the dead girl campsite. And my niece still to this day will she's like, oh, do you want me to grab the dead girl blanket? But we of course could wash it, so it's a little less yucky with a blanket. But yeah, still in my family, the dead girl blanket. If my mom is listening, she's picturing it. She knows exactly what I'm talking about.
And that's like at least 20 years ago. Am I doing my math right on that?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Maybe a little less. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was a really good blanket, and we still have it. So, but I think a pillow, you might be inclined to put a pillow in the same space, but you can't really wash a pillow as well, and certainly not a body pillow. There's no way to wash that. But the Wellesley body pillow is I feel very seen by this.
I am trying to figure out what I find grosser, the sandals or the blanket. What would I like to use less? Somebody's shoes of an unknown origin? Like,
they're open. They're sandals. Yeah. And also, I have small feet, and also they were really nice sandals. But I love Dirty Christmas. Yeah, we used to just call it move out season because I grew up in a college town, and it was definitely, I remember, early summer days driving around with my sister right when I got my driver's license, and we would just drive up and down the streets of campus to see what we could find and look for free stuff.
Yeah.
Piles.
I have a great voicemail here I'm going to play from Carolyn. I would just say, like, Genevieve is somebody who really likes looking for a home for things when we're getting rid of them. My inclination is take it to Goodwill. They'll have a use for it. There are some really big Goodwills, both in Shoreline and Ballard around here, that have really good distribution centers. You wait in line in your car for a little bit, and they sort it out. You can't just dump garbage. Let's all respect Goodwill. You don't want to just hand off garbage to them that they're going to have to throw away too. But like anything that you feel like has another use, if you take it to Goodwill, I feel like that's a home run. You know that somebody is going to be able to use it. Genevieve is more inclined to like, let's start by putting it out at the side of the road possibly, or she's really good at maybe saying, can I get a few bucks for this if I sell it online? She just sold a camera bag of mine that I didn't need anymore that was in perfect condition. Maybe got $30 out of it or something. I don't know. It's bingo money, right? And so I think she enjoys that process more, whereas I'm just like, get it out of here and give it to Goodwill. And I really don't like being the person to put something on the curb. And I'm just like, it just is going to sit out there. Who knows? Genevieve sometimes does it. And so, I take part in trying to help her get rid of some stuff in that way, but it's never my idea. But we were rearranging our basement last summer, I think, and we got some better bookshelves. And we had temporarily had, I think you can kind of picture this like very basic kind of coated wire shelving. It was probably about maybe chest high. Maybe it was built of like 2 shelves, but it's that like, it's almost like grating sort of. It's just like, it's all metal, right? So you could assemble it yourself, and you would see it maybe in like an industrial kitchen. You could maybe put your supplies on it or something like that. We had a couple of those things. And Genevieve's like, if you put those out at the curb, they're going to go in a second. I'm like, I don't know. She's like, trust me. People need shelving. Like if you put shelves out there, especially not old wooden, but just something that is like completely serviceable and not in bad shape, not anything fancy to look at, just kind of almost quasi-industrial shelving, they will go. I put them out in our driveway with a sign that said free. I came back inside. I don't know if it was 15 minutes. I don't know if it was 10 minutes I went back outside. Those things were gone. And I was like, okay, so there is a lesson there in what is valuable to people and what is not.
Right, exactly. And I think that's sort of the difference, too, with, like, campus move-out days, right, like Dave was talking about. Because, one, the stuff is nicer. It's usually lightly used, which is appealing for a lot of people who are going looking. And it hasn't usually been outside in like the weather for a long time. It's usually June, right?
Yeah,
and so that also I think is helpful. And it's like useful because it's stuff for small spaces. It's not, too sort of unwieldy. And so I think that is one reason that college campus, sidewalk dumping is maybe a little more fruitful for a lot of us, because I definitely have gotten some stuff from those situations.
Here, let's turn to Carolyn here, who had a great story about a curbside find.
Hi, Andrew and Hannah. I just finished listening to the most recent episode, and I have a story about something I found on the side of the road. About a year and a half ago, I started living with my boyfriend, and he had a old dryer that every time he turned it on, it would make this noise that was kind of like the ring race noise in Lord of the Rings. It was very, very abrasive to my ears, but he actually couldn't hear it because of hearing loss in a certain area of his hearing. So every time he turned it on, I would be like, ah! And he'd be like, what's going on? I'd be like, don't you hear that noise? So it was really, really abrasive, and it was like really tough to deal with. Then one day we're driving home from the beach in this part of Everett, Howarth Park, and we passed by this dryer on the side of the road that was the exact same model as his dryer, and it said free, and it also says something like this works, which is usually a sign that something doesn't work.
Can I pause there and ask you, before we hear the climactic ending of this story, is that true? I never thought people were being disingenuous. I thought they were just like saying, no, really, this works.
It does make me feel like, the lady doth protest too much a little bit if you feel the need to say it works, but it can also be a way to move something faster, I think, because I've seen plenty of like Instapots or whatever on the sidewalk where the sign says free works. I think it can go either way. I don't know that I always trust people, especially again when you're just trying to get rid of something. You're just trying to move this unit,
Yeah. I have a issue too with like, you're talking about like sort of this urge to sort of like acquire, sort of like I was walking down the street the other day and one of my neighbors had a little table set up. This was not junky at all. Like they clearly were very deliberate. They were, I don't know if they were moving or clearing out a little area. They had a little table and a few items on it with the sign that said free. And one of the items, I was like, oh, look, they have the same exact like kind of cat treat puzzle that we have. It's like this thing that's maybe, I don't know, 2 feet by 1 feet, and it sits on the floor, and you put cat treats in various parts of it, and it takes the cat a little bit longer to get the food out. Not Bingo, though. He's got this thing nailed, but it's the only way I can slow him down at all. But anyway, I was just like I was on my way somewhere. I wasn't even heading home, and I saw it. I'm like, oh, that's exactly like our cat treat puzzle. I should grab that one in case we need an extra one. Then I was like, what are you doing? You don't need 2 of these things. It was like this impulse of being like, well, that's a good thing. We have one of those. Now we should have 2 of them. Your brain probably lit
up because it recognized it. That's the thing, it's a recognition thing, right? And so it's funny that Carolyn saw this dryer that was the same as the one they had. Like, it probably even was more pulling because like, oh, yeah, I have that one.
Anyway, I did not take the cat treat puzzle. But anyway, so Carolyn and her boyfriend at the time see this dryer. It's the same exact one. It says works. She's dubious.
We were like, let's take it. So we put it in our car, and we drove home, and it was a major test of our relationship because we uninstalled the old dryer, and we reinstalled this new one, and it was like washers flying off, getting into the corner, like finding things in the corner of the laundry room where things had never been moved, and also just the threat that this thing wouldn't work. And we spent a few hours actually installing it, and we finally got it installed, and it actually worked perfectly, and it was the exact same model, but it didn't make the ring race noise, and now we have a dryer that works a lot better and doesn't hurt my ears. So that was very exciting. I just wanted to leave that story, and thanks for the podcast. I love it. All right, bye.
Sorry, I was weird when I saw you at Teddy's the other day, Carolyn. I wonder what Carolyn did with the old dryer.
I was wondering the same thing. I had the
question,
exact
right?
same thought.
Yeah.
I was like, well, what do you do with the old one? Because when you buy a new something like an appliance, usually, like, we always pay the extra for them to take the old one. Like, I just, like, take it away. It's worth it to me to have the guys lug it out. When we got new washer and dryer, we were like, get rid of these. And also because then they usually, like, park them out, or they, you know, whatever, send them to, they resell them if they're in good enough shape, whatever. So if you do it yourself, yeah, what do you do with the old one? Also, this does also remind me of the time, like, why are all my stories about camping today? I don't know. But when my uncle, R.I.P., bless him, amazing guy, pulled out the drum of an old dryer.
Oh, yes. Use it as a fire pit, right?
Uh-huh.
Yes,
Because,
it's like an early solo stove because of all the air holes.
Because you can part it out. And so maybe Carolyn and her boyfriend pulled apart the old dryer and used the parts for something else.
Potentially. Yeah, that is a good question. That reminds me again of, we bought a new washing machine. A washing machine came with this house, but it didn't work for us because we needed stackables, and also this was and I didn't even kind of realize it at the time, but we talked about it later, and I learned, is it induction? Not induction, that's an oven. What is the kind of, it was one of those washing machines that doesn't have the spoke in the middle of it, and we were talking about them on the show.
Talked about this. Yeah, the agitator or whatever.
The agitator, yeah, thank you. And so anyway, we didn't want it anymore, but we knew when we bought the new washer, they would take the old one away. And it might have cost us $50 more, but I was like, good, $50 well spent, just get it out of our life. I don't want it. Genevieve's like, I can sell this thing. Like, this is a good washer we're getting rid of. Let's not pay somebody to get rid of it so that they can sell it to somebody else. Let's sell it ourselves. And I was like, I'm always grumbling. But she did it. She found some guy online who gave us, I don't know, $100, $200 or something for this thing. Came, picked it up himself. It was no problem. I had this weird thing in my head, and this is definitely me being broken. Like, I was anxious about the time, even though it was only going to be a 24-hour period, that there was no washing machine in our house. Like, I've gotten so used to the comfort of not, and I didn't have a washing machine for most of my adult life. I was always going to the laundromat. But suddenly this idea of being like, but what do I do for that 24 hours without a washing machine? And Genevieve was just like, you won't wash clothes. It's fine. But I got to give her credit for kind of having the I don't know, the follow through to do that. I do not.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff out in the garage that will someday be listed on Craigslist, not by me. And we also have several things that will someday be put on our curb, not by me, because just to get rid of them. And it is surprising sometimes what people will take. We had a bunch of paving stones in our yard that we took out, and Keith was like, I'm just going to put them on the curb. And I was like, okay. They were gone in minutes. Like, people, and there's a lot of people who are scrappers. There are people who are pickers who just, like, will pick stuff up on the side of the road. They tinker. I think it depends on, again, if you're in, like, a suburb somewhere in a gated community, probably this is not going to work for you. But if you live in, a city of some sort, it's more likely that things will disappear. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times with getting rid of stuff on Craigslist, it's less about the actual getting money for it and more about just the getting rid of it. Mm-hmm. Because I would also just as soon list things on, like, again, like, if your region or your neighborhood has a buy nothing group, a lot of those folks will come pick up, but you still have to, like, maybe facilitate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is
I could see that.
Sometimes annoying, but yeah, there is sort of a wherewithal you have to have with, like, unloading stuff like that.
And being comfortable, like, kind of housing it for a while and trusting that it's all going to work. That's why I'm just like, when I'm done with something, I want it out of my sight. I want it out of my house. Got this note from Stephanie, listener number 82, Stephanie from Brooklyn. My best roadside find was really a sidewalk find. I've been wanting to buy a second humidifier for my steam-heated apartment, which got super dry in the wintertime. I loved the humidifier that we already had, and I wanted to get another one just like it because it was really easy to clean. A few days after these are our people, Hannah. A few days after I first thought about getting a second one, somebody around the corner was moving out and had piled a bunch of stuff by the curb, including the exact model of Honeywell humidifier. Same deal, right? You were mentioning that before. It was magical and probably saved me something like $80. Simply amazing. So that's a great story. Got this one from Michael, too. who says, I want to tell you about my best find ever. When my daughter was 2, I spotted a 3-wheeler Batman-mobile, as Michael calls it here. Do you know that bit from The New Girl by any chance?
The New Girl, yeah, I was going to say it's a New Girl, yeah.
Batman-mobile. Yeah. Anyway, I spotted a 3-wheeler Batman-mobile on the side of the curb with a free sign on it. It had lights and sounds, and all 3 of my kids loved it for the last 10 years. Now they've all outgrown it, but it was now it's taken its rightful place in the rafters of our garage. And Michael showed us a photo. I don't know if you want to put this on the website, but of the thing sort of hanging up in the rafters. And it does look like a pretty slick Batman-mobile 3-wheeler, man. That's a perfect, because it's something that lives outside anyway. You don't need to worry about bringing it into the house. And what it's like, oh yeah, this is a scruffy thing. Genevieve and I were coming home from the bar. I think this was last week. And I'm not going to lie to you, Hannah, we were pretty tuned up. I think it was like a Thursday night or something like that. And we'd walked all the way down from the pub at Piper's Creek back down to our place, which is, I don't know how many blocks that is. And it's not an especially appealing walk. It's kind of a busy, kind of cruddy road. But then you get to the corner of our street and that main drag. And on the corner is one of those really cheap-ass little Razor scooters that kids are, little metal thing,
Sure.
Not a rental one. Somebody had just dumped it there, and it was missing maybe like one handlebar grip, but other than that, it worked. Genevieve and I had clocked it on the way out, I believe, and then on the way, but we were sober then, and then we come home, we're drunk, and then somehow Genevieve gets real ballsy when she's been drinking, and I don't know if it. So I said something about the scooter that she took as a dare, and I didn't mean it as a dare, but she took it as a dare. After that happens, toothpaste is out of the tube. You're not getting it back in there. So next thing I know, she is like sort of, I don't know if triumphantly is the right word, or I don't know, in some sort of manner of like trying to show me what's what. She gets on the little scooter and just goes all, and I'm yelling at her. I'm like, I literally think I yelled at one point, nothing good is going to come of this. Like, we're in our late 40s. We don't need to be drunkenly riding these little scooters around. And she just has to go a block or two, I think. And she just zooms off way ahead of me. I'm just like, okay, well, there goes Genevieve. I'm seriously wondering,
it's great to know her.
I'm just like, are we going to have an ankle situation or whatever? Turns out we did not have an ankle situation. Genevieve just like dumps the scooter outside of our house and runs in. And then I, of course, am behind her because I'm just walking. And so 5 minutes later, I go in the house and she's all like triumphant. Like, I told you I could do that or whatever. I'm like, okay, great. I've already stopped caring about this. Until the next day when I go outside and the scooter is still just sitting out there where she dumped it. And I'm like, oh, well, this is one of those things where nature will sort of find a way, right? Like in our neighborhood, somebody will see a scooter on the ground and take it the same way Genevieve did. But then it becomes day 2, day 3. I start getting real passive aggressive. I'm in the house and I'm saying, Genevieve, some real scumbag left a Razor scooter right in front of our house, just dumped it there, and it's just been there for days. I don't know what the plan is, if this awful person has any plans to clean it up or whatever. Genevieve eventually like sort of picks it up and like sort of like leans it up against our hedges, and still nobody picks it up. I think the next day I lean it up against like a telephone pole outside our house, and I start thinking like, how is it in this neighborhood everybody is scared of like what they call porch pirates? I hate that phrase. And by the way, we've had no issues with that whatsoever. But like, I just sort of live in one of those neighborhoods where, because it is sort of like in, sort of a kind of a transitional place, you have a lot of like homeowners who are just kind of like, everybody's out to get us at all times, and you got to like lock everything down. I'm like, how can we not get some? We're asking somebody to steal the scooter. Like, I'm begging someone to steal the scooter off of the front of our house. And I think eventually I like leaned it up in an appealing way against a telephone pole, and finally somebody took it. But I was like, we do not have to worry about theft in our neighborhood, or this is or Razor scooters are a dime a dozen.
Yeah, or nobody wants a Razor scooter.
Yeah, exactly.
That is, again, it became your problem. Like, she made it your problem.
Yes, exactly. I'm like, oh, I'm glad that you won the little scooter debate of 2025. Now what?
Right, now what do I do with it? And it's funny because I do feel like there's a rubric of what does and doesn't make good sidewalk dumping, like you said, if it's already an outsidey type of thing, that is probably more, if you have old patio furniture that is still in pretty good shape, then it doesn't matter if it's been outside because it's an outside thing. If it's functional, that's big. If it's relatively new looking, if it's not gross. But I am a little surprised that Razor scooter didn't go faster.
Yeah.
Because even if you were just someone who had been like walking for a long time and was like, I'm tired of walking, you might be like, ooh, all right. Although, if it wasn't clear that it was a free thing, if you were like, oh, a kid left their scooter out here, you know?
That's
so, like,
what my thought was, which when it was sort of like laying in the grass like that, it looked like something a kid had left behind. I'm like, oh, maybe people don't take things if it looks like a kid just left it there. So that's why I sort of like moved it a little bit further away. I was not trying to re-dump it, though. This was one where I was like, this is our responsibility. Like, we took this from somewhere else in a dumb moment and brought it home, and now like we do have to responsibly either like somebody needs to take this or I need to dispose of it in some way.
Yeah. And I know too, I mean, sometimes like you said, like going to Goodwill and stuff, I've had things that I tried to unload to Goodwill that they wouldn't take because there was something even just tiny bit wrong. And so in that case, like because it didn't have the handle grip, like Goodwill might have been like, we don't want it, you know? I had a couch I had a sofa that I got from the side of the road. I've had several sofas from the side of the road, which is not a good one. Not a good one to get. But when you're very poor and there's like really not enough money to acquire such a thing, and you live in an apartment and you're currently sitting on 2 wooden folding chairs as a couch, you get a little despo. So I had a little couch, or it was like a little love seat that I had, and I had it for years. It moved to several places, and then finally I was getting rid of it. And I took it to Goodwill, and it was quite small. It fit in the back of I drove a Volvo at the time. It fit in the back of it. And I remember taking it and being like, here you go, look, perfectly good couch. Like, totally, it's in good shape. It was really cute. And they were like, oh, we can't take it. And I was like, why? And it was because it didn't have feet. And it had originally had feet on it, but then I'd never had it with feet. It had always just sat on the floor.
Yeah. Those things kind of unscrew usually, so probably somebody removed them for whatever reason.
At some point, years before, the feet had been separated from the rest of it, and they were like, yeah, I can't take it. I was like, it's still a fine couch. I've been sitting on it. I just don't have room in my new place. And they were like, nope. And so then that one was one where I was like, I don't know what to do. And I think I ended up leaving it by my apartment's like parking garage, sort of everybody. You know how some apartments just have an area where everybody puts stuff and it's for that purpose of like get rid of and take. So I ended up putting it there, and I don't know what happened to it after that. But I remember being very disappointed in Goodwill with that because I was like, this is fine.
Yeah.
So your scooter you might not have been able to take to Goodwill.
I've had chairs rejected, like little dinette style chairs that might have even been legit vintage, but if there was just like a little bit of a crack on some of the pleather or whatever, and I was like, but we were using them. I still thought they were pretty cute chairs, but they're like, nope, we got to draw the line somewhere. But I respect that. Like they don't want to take on the responsibility of just throwing away other people's garbage if they know they can't sell it or it's not useful to them. I'm going to play one more voicemail here. Now this sort of changes the topic a little bit, but then comes back to the topic of roadside finds. This is from listener Anya, and first Anya wants to weigh in on conditioner bars for hair. So this came up on the show last week. I don't think I really knew about this, but you were saying that both shampoo and conditioner can kind of come in bar form now, and you can use it to, wash and condition your hair. But you said something that I sort of honed in on for some reason. But you said that you like to use the shampoo bar. That works for you, but the conditioner one doesn't break down in the same way. Do I have that right? So it's harder to use the conditioner bar in your hair?
Yeah, I like conditioner bars because they don't come in plastic, right? That's the reason that you have them, is that they, instead of like a liquid conditioner, but they just, I have a really hard time. My hair is pretty thick and curly, and so if I'm detangling, it doesn't do the same slippy stuff that liquid conditioner does, and I have not had success. Do we have a solution?
I think so. Out of curiosity, so you just don't use bar conditioner right now? You've gone back to that. You just kind of use some sort of liquid. Okay, well, this is what Anya had to say on that.
Hi, Hannah and Andrew. This is listener Anya. I think I might be listener 21. I don't remember. I am calling to talk about bar.
That's sort of disrespectful. Now that I think about it, like we have a finite amount of numbers to give away, as anybody who understands math knows. and we're giving away these numbers, and listeners don't even remember what number they are.
But sometimes it's because we have to reassign or like have people share, or they don't get the number they want. So it's fine. I'm fine with it.
Oh, I'm looking at our list here. Obviously, I'm sort of joking. And this is Dr. Anya. That's right. Anya has called in the show before, of course, and you are absolutely right. You are listener number 21. Okay, go ahead.
I'm calling to talk about bar conditioner. One of the things that I have done for my daughter, who does have curly, thicker hair, is grate the conditioner bars and then add water and heat it up over the stove, and then putting it into a glass like hand soap or hand lotion dispenser for my daughter to use so that she can get that conditioner all the way through her hair without us having to buy the plastic bottled liquid conditioner. So I essentially turn the bar conditioner into liquid conditioner.
What do you think of that?
I think that is brilliant. I love that suggestion. I would definitely do that. I think I have like half an old conditioner bar somewhere I might try it with. And
so the reason you're doing all of this is because of the environmental impact, because they come, a bar can come in cardboard and you can recycle that, right? And but I am surprised that there isn't other more sustainable packaging that could also handle a liquid. Like, I know that you don't want to just pour a liquid into paper. I'm not a chemist or a physicist, but I know that that's not a good. I think Anya is a physicist. But like, what about those?
That's why she knew to do that.
Yes, exactly. I think I might have. But like, you know those boxes of water you can get, or they're almost like cartons of water, and it's sort of like they're square, so they can like kind of ship easier, and also it's not like plastic. Like, those are like a kind of cardboard that is treated to be able to hold liquid. Is that treatment? Does that make it like not as recyclable or something? Because I'm kind of surprised that they can't if you buy like a thing of broth at the store. You know, like the cardboard that broth comes in. I can't believe that they can't sell shampoo and conditioner in those.
That's a good question. I feel like part of it is because people want the pump. I think the pump is a big part of it.
Okay, sure, yeah.
But I
was sort of thinking that you then pour it into your
which you could do. Some do come in that form. The one I'm using now is in like a bag that is made of a like flexible recyclable plastic that you kind of like
bag.
Yeah, exactly right. I slap it every time.
I forgot about slapping the bag until I pictured your shampoo.
It's funny that I also have a wine bag in my shower. It's hung up.
That is the least surprising thing I've ever heard.
If I told you I had a wine bag in my shower, like suspended with a little tippy tap, and I was just like,
hey, you just get underneath it.
You wouldn't be surprised. No one would be surprised by that.
Surprised. I'm inspired.
I know, that's brilliant. Shower beer, get out. Shower wine. Now we're talking. But yeah, I know. I think it has to do with cost. I think it's just because people who make cosmetics are cheap.
All right, well, let's continue with Anya's voicemail here, because that's really interesting. And if you do melt down your bar, I'd be interested in hearing how that works for you. But then Anya also wanted to weigh in on the curbside stuff.
I don't know if that would work. Obviously, curly hair has a lot of different needs that I don't have, so that recommendation is like a mileage may vary situation. I also recently just picked up something, it's not particularly cool, but I was really excited about it off of the side of the road. I was driving back home from dropping my daughter off at school, and a neighbor had set out a screen door with a free sign on it. And I had recently installed a sliding glass door, but hadn't gotten a screen for it. So I'd gotten the sliding door used, and it didn't come with the screen. And so I was really excited to pick up a free screen door that fit my sliding glass door. Hope you guys have a great day.
See, that one is amazing to me. That if I hadn't heard that voicemail, and if somebody had left a screen door like against my fence or something, I would have gone on a whole rant about like, who's going to take a screen door that is so specific? You would have to have the exact measurement. I mean, there must be some standardization, but I'm just like, who's going to take a screen door that's going to fit their sliding glass door? And here's Anya saying it was exactly what I needed, not unlike the dryer and the humidifier. It was exactly to the specs that she needed. That astounds me.
Sometimes you find exactly what you want. And again, I think it goes down to that idea of like, okay, what makes for a good curbside object? Like, what should you put out on the curb? Something someone might actually use, something with some kind of value, something that can be transported. A screen door is pretty light, so it's not, it might be a little unwieldy, but it's not going to be impossible. We have a screen door that we want to replace soon, hopefully. Well, we're going to do a lot of door stuff. And I've never been sure. I always assumed I would just take it over to we have a restore not far from us.
Yeah,
that does, reselling and stuff. But maybe I will just put it on the curb because it's still perfectly functional. It's just not the one that we want, and maybe somebody else does. And so I think that is. So here's my question: before we wrap the show up, here's what I think. How long do you let something sit in front of your house?
That's a good question.
Before you call it and you bring it back in and you decide, okay, no one wants this.
And that it really depends on the weather conditions, time of year, what's been going on, has it been rained upon or whatever. Genevieve had this big, heavy, it was kind of cool in its own way, but it was kind of a big, heavy desk that was probably in some sort of office building in the 1970s or something like that. And it had a bit of style to it, and but it wouldn't be for everybody. And Genevieve wanted to put that out in the front yard, and I remember being very reluctant. I'm like, I don't want this I don't want this Soviet bloc era desk sitting out in the front yard. And it did sit out there. I think we negotiated that a little bit, and I think I maybe said, okay, on a certain day, then we need to bring it back in. But then you got to again rent a truck and take it to the dump or something, and this thing would have been pretty heavy. But we were on the very last day. I can't remember. I feel like I was either working in the yard or somebody literally knocked on our door and just said, is that desk out front, is that free? Apparently the free sign flew off it, or maybe we didn't put one on or something. And I was like, yeah, and I got to meet a neighbor. He's like, oh yeah, we just moved in. We live just in these apartments, right around the alleyway. And he had his truck there. He's like, I just didn't want to take it without checking with you first, which I thought was super, super sweet. And then I'm like, brother, you are doing us a huge favor. So I went out there with him and helped load it in. But all that is to say, I feel like 5 days is where I put that. A piece of furniture out in the wind, 5 days. After that, it's your problem again. You got to bring it back in.
I would also say if it rains at any point, bring it in. You're done.
You're done.
And make sure you're doing it when you have if you're going to put stuff out on your own personal curb, make sure you have good weather. I would also say I generally do not agree with putting things out on a curb that is not your personal curb, or it is not your shared. If you're in an apartment complex and you can see it from your front door or one of your windows, so you can keep an eye on it, fine. But I would say dumping it on anybody else's property or shared area is not good. Don't do that.
Yeah. I feel strongly that way. Right. See my above comments about the mattress that was dumped in our yard. I am astounded also by Anya's voicemail for one other reason, which is how this has brought us full circle in not just one, but two ways. I'm just now realizing that we had this whole conversation today about everything we've talked about curbside recycling or whatever you want to call it, because last time we did this show off air, I told you we're going to the dump. And the reason we were going to the dump was because we had an old screen door. Now, it wasn't useful to anybody. It was an old storm door from and it was literally falling off our house. We finally had to kind of take it all the way off. And it was a real conundrum for us. What do we do? We have a car. We have a Volkswagen Golf that you can stuff to the gills, but it was too unwieldy to take it to the dump. So we had to actually rent a truck for $50 for the day or something like that. But then once you're a truck person, Vives and I spent that whole Saturday being like, we're truck people now. We're driving around in this handy Andy rent-a-truck thing.
Oh my God.
And so once you have that truck, though, you're like, you got to take advantage of it. So we didn't just put the screen door in there. We put screen door. We put all this yard waste that I had been collecting in the garage, just leaves and stuff. But you really have to make a go of it if you're going to the dump. And I got to say, they're good when we when we showed up, she's like, well, do you think that's glass in there? She was trying. So she's like, most of your stuff is recyclable and compostable, so we wouldn't charge you. If you can find any way to put that door, like if you can get the glass out of there and recycle it and then put the metal in our scrap metal, we don't have to charge you. Like, they really try to work with you to, like, find a way. 'Cause she's like, I don't want to charge you the whole thing just for one door. But at the end of the day, we're like, we just had to. Yeah. We couldn't figure it out.
So two things that points to, and they both point back to, like, NextDoor or whatever your community, email or whatever it is. One, if you have just one thing and you can't rent a truck or you don't want to, check on your NextDoor or your neighborhood community board or whatever and see if anybody else is doing dump runs. My community on my NextDoor, there's always someone who's like, I'm doing a dump run and I have room, so if you want to throw anything on, and like maybe you pitch in a few dollars, for gas and like for the cost of it, but it's usually just because they have room in the load. And so, like, you might be able to do that, which again is like really speaks to my heart as far as like community stuff goes.
That's great.
And if you have stuff that you're trying to unload, and you're putting it on your curb, a good thing to do is to like take a picture of it and list what you have and put that on NextDoor at like where your like what your street is, because that might draw someone's attention. Like if you're someone like Dr. Anya and you're like, oh, I do need a screen door. If you saw someone said, I have all this free stuff, including a screen door, like if you didn't happen to drive by it, but you could be made aware of it. Yeah. So that's another good way to like unload things more quickly. Yeah,
there's a lot of nice, I'm not on NextDoor, but there's some community email list that I was put upon, which I kind of didn't. I think I've mentioned this to you before. At first, I didn't really want to be on, because it's kind of NextDoor adjacent. Some like a little bit of NIMBYism, a little complaining here and there.
You're gonna get that, yeah.
You're gonna get that, but there's also a lot of nice stuff. And we're in the season now where a lot of people are like, I have some tomato starters, and Genevieve just grabbed some tomatoes from a neighbor, and sometimes literally this one woman will be like, I made too many cupcakes or whatever. And it's kind of a good way to get to know your neighbors, and also to see the dichotomy there too, because sometimes it's the same person who's like posting things that are like kind of against how I see the world in the neighborhood or whatever, and I think, oh, this NIMBY. But when it's the same person who's like, oh, I also have some cupcakes, and Genevieve swings by and meets them, and they're a pleasant person, you're like, you know what? We don't all have to agree on everything at all times. We are all in this together, and people contain multitudes, and so that's kind of a good reminder for me too.
Maybe you forge that relationship, and then later you get to have a really civil conversation about like, hey, people who live outside are human beings.
Or you slowly sneak it, you ingratiate yourself, and you sneak into their lives, and then you kill them in the middle of the night.
Either way.
That's
These
another
are great
way
options. There's a lot on the table here.
The other way this has come full circle is I now have to go help Genevieve install the new door, because that day that we dumped the door, we also had to use the truck to pick up the new door, which we did, and it's in the garage. I am not a handy person. Genevieve is the handy person in this family, so I promised to be her assistant today. And so
you are literally not the handy Andy.
I am not the handy Andy. I'm unhandy Andy. Let's not keep on riffing on that. It's going to get too weird too quickly.
For the best.
I mean, there was a time where they called me Handsy Andy for a while, and that led to all kinds of HR problems at my old employ. That was a really, really fun show. We went a little bit long, and I am having some feelings right now that I talked way too much at the top of the show. And the reason I bring this up is because we had another call out to listeners, which we've already gotten some responses on, and I want to hear more responses. And next show, we are just going to be very listener forward and go through all of your responses about the worst messes you can remember having to clean up. We've already got some really good voicemails on it, but if you could call in and just think back, or hopefully you have to think back a long ways, I don't know, but think about the worst, most atrocious mess you had to clean up. Call our voicemail line, tell us the story. That's it. That's the plan.
I cannot wait.
Yep, we will do that next week. So thank you, everybody, for listening, and thank you for sharing your stories. We're going to share with you here in a moment all the ways you can get a hold of us, and we will talk to you in a couple of weeks. Bye.
You've been listening to the Spotless Podcast. If you have a question for Hannah and Andrew or some cleaning advice, call the Spotline at 508-HOW-WASH. That's 508-469-9274. You can also email them at spotlesspod@gmail.com. We'll be back soon. But until then, always remember, life is messy, but it doesn't have